The sun had barely begun to stretch across the rooftops when it happened. My 15-year-old son, Elijah, rolled out onto the sidewalk in his electric wheelchair, a sketchpad on his lap and his hoodie drawn up against the morning chill. He hummed a little song to himself, something from his favorite cartoons he did every morning, heading toward his favorite bench near the lake just 2 blocks down. He didn't make it 60 seconds before he was shot. No warning, no sirens, no shouting neighbors. Just the mechanical stomp of HOA-issued boots and a rent-a-cop with a holstered pistol acting like he was in a war zone. "You don't belong here," he barked, before firing 3 shots that shattered the peace and tore through my boy's chest. I heard it from inside. Just 3 awful cracks. I ran. Barefoot, no phone, no sense of anything except pure maternal instinct. Elijah's wheelchair had toppled onto the grass, its wheels still spinning. He lay there shaking, blood soaking into the sidewalk that once echoed with his laughter. The man who shot him, Officer Gregory Tate, the HOA's private security hire, stood over him like he'd just taken out a terrorist, hands still on his weapon, chest puffed out like he was the hero of some neighborhood drama. "Matched a description," he said. "Didn't have the right registration tag." My fists hit his chest. My screams didn't register. He stood there unflinching while Elijah gasped beneath him, fingers twitching. My neighbors? They stood on their porches like nothing had happened, coffee cups in hand, mouths shut. Not one screamed. Not one helped. The paramedics were delayed at the gate. Off course they were. The guard was on break. Elijah bled on the sidewalk while bureaucracy fumbled for keys. Hours later, sitting in the ER, my hands caked in dried blood, my voice gone, I watched the local news crawl with its sanitized headline: "Teen in wheelchair shot by HOA officer during community violation." Not attempted murder, not hate, just community violation. They tried to spin it fast. Claimed Elijah was aggressive, that he was trespassing, that Officer Tate feared for his life. From a kid in a wheelchair. They expected me to be just another grieving mother who cried and went home. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what I was capable of. They didn't know they just declared war on the wrong woman. While they were deleting security footage and prepping press releases, I was already on the phone with people I hadn't spoken to in years, activating contacts, retrieving records. The next day, I showed up at the HOA headquarters, not broken, not sobbing, but steel-eyed and composed. I walked past their iron gates with my own copy of the bylaws and a notepad full of evidence. This wasn't just about Elijah anymore. This was about every kid who had ever been made to feel like they were less because of their disability. Every mother who was told their child didn't fit the neighborhood's vision. And I promised my son that morning, leaning over his hospital bed, tubes in his nose, monitors softly beeping. This would not be the end of his story. We had moved into Marigold Crossing 2 years prior. The neighborhood brochure looked like a utopia: inclusive, safe, progressive. The welcome packet had shiny photos, happy multi-ethnic families grilling under gazebos, kids playing in fountains, everyone smiling. Buried in the handbook was a clause: assistive mobility devices that impair natural community aesthetics or flow may be subject to restriction. It sounded harmless, maybe even thoughtful to someone not paying attention. But it was a landmine of ableist policy. I began digging, and what I uncovered was a history soaked in quiet discrimination. The HOA had fined a single mother named Rena Diaz $18,000 for installing a ramp, even though she had permits. They said it broke visual symmetry. She left bankrupt. A man named Mr. Keen had his tires slashed after requesting a pool lift. He left in fear. Never filed a report. The dog park? Those weird cobblestones weren't decorative. HOA design minutes described them as deterrents for wheelchairs. The documents were there in black and white. Then I found the HOA's internal community image report, a quarterly PDF circulated among board members. It had surveillance photos. Elijah was in there, circled in red, labeled high visibility liability, recommend relocation or restricted hours. They had targeted my son. Long before they shot him, they were planning to erase him. Officer Tate hadn't acted alone. He was the end of a very long spear. The board, the private security firm, the policies, they had all decided Elijah didn't belong. He was an eyesore, a liability, a threat to their brand. I requested records, dug through board meeting audio, found seminar slide decks with phrases like navigating the aesthetics of disability and minimizing visual disruption. They weren't hiding their hate. They thought no one would find it. But I did. I wasn't just any mom. I was a civil rights attorney with a specialty in ADA and fair housing violations. I had argued in federal court. I had written policy recommendations adopted by cities. They didn't know I was a warhorse in yoga pants. After Elijah was shot, I didn't break. I planned. I compiled footage. I wired our home cameras to cloud backups. Bought Elijah a wheelchair cam disguised as an art tool. And then I went public. A journalist friend launched an investigative podcast. Episode 1. Erased in Plain Sight. It featured the footage, the memos, the HOA handbooks. The episode hit 1 million streams overnight. At the next HOA board meeting, I didn't come alone. I brought 2 DOJ investigators, a camera crew, and 6 activists in wheelchairs. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I showed them the video of Elijah being gunned down. Crystal clear. Tate yelling, Elijah raising his hands, sketchpad open. 3 shots. The room went silent. Then I placed a lawsuit on the table. 3 days later, the DOJ issued a cease and desist on the HOA security force. Tate was arrested. The HOA tried damage control. Too late. I filed a class action lawsuit. Then another. Then a third. I filed a federal housing discrimination case with the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. I pulled insurance records, found their policies were voided by ADA violations. Their shield shattered. Then came the press. The podcast went viral. News vans lined the streets. Protesters flooded the gates. A GoFundMe for Elijah's recovery crossed $2 million. But I wasn't done. I quietly bought properties. LLCs, silent partners. One by one, I acquired voting rights. Within months, I was elected interim HOA president. My first act? Disband the HOA police. Second? Rename the lake park Elijah Square. No more lies. No more exclusions. I didn't stop there. I lobbied Congress. Testified in front of the Joint Housing Committee. We passed the Elijah Act, a sweeping law requiring federal oversight of HOA policies. Mandated accessibility audits and criminal penalties for discrimination. Marigold Crossing was reborn. The gates were removed. Sidewalks rebuilt. A fully inclusive playground now stood where the HOA once held its picnics. Elijah's bench was remade in marble with a bronze plaque that read, "There's room for everyone here." Elijah started drawing again. Not superheroes anymore, but buildings, blueprints. He wanted to be an architect. His dream? Designing neighborhoods that loved everyone back. We launched a nonprofit together, Clear Lines, focused on accessible architecture, inclusive policy, and advocacy. One of our first grants? Rebuilding the home of Rena Diaz. As for the old board members, most vanished. Some lost their careers. One, the former president, was barred from any future housing authority role by federal order. Tate is serving a 25-year sentence. And me? I still live in Elijah Square. I still walk the same sidewalk where they tried to erase him. But now, kids roll past on scooters and wheelchairs. No one flinches. Everyone belongs. And every time I see a child sketching by the lake, I remember. This wasn't just our fight. It was a beginning. Elijah didn't just survive. He changed the world.